Okay, for our final session of the evening, we will be talking about funding opportunities.
We should. Let me just step out to make sure that there's no panel. Yeah, please.
Good to see you.
No, I'd love to. Thank you. Lots to discuss.
Hey, Tara.
Let's do that.
I'll get this going, right? Yeah, howdy.
It's likewise.
You're with? Caltrans. Oh, great. Okay, great. All right, if you get my slides up, I'll try and get started so we can keep the pace going. Cal start? Okay. If we go all settle down here a little bit, I know we're anxious to get to the wonderful reception following today's event. I hate to be the last thing between you and a couple of good drinks, but we have some good news for you. We have a whole panel of folks that want to give you some money. So those who are lucky enough to stay here get to go home with the funds. So today's... Sorry, this way. Okay. So we have a great panel of almost all the agencies here in the state that have we are, as compared to many other parts of the country, very fortunate to have a public that votes for funding for cleaning the air, greenhouse gas reduction programs, and some great organizations like CalSTART that walk the halls and make sure some of that goes to the transit world. So, so today we're going to talk. We have a panel of the folks from the Energy Commission, from folks talking about the HVIP program, from Caltrans, CalSTA, and CARB that all want to provide you with some funding. And the good news is we may not be able to go into great detail here today, but I think everybody's slides, if I'm not correct, will be available to the group. And on each slide, we've made sure that we put a phone number and a contact for these funds and how to get the RFQ. So you can actually, take this group of slides and make sure that your grant funding office has this group and is making sure they're ticking off the list and figuring out how they can fund these wonderful projects that you're moving forward on. So I'm going to start first, and I'm going to talk about two Federal Transit Administration programs for funding, and one project here in the state of California that's being administered by the Department of General Services. So if we go on to the next slide, what's all started this many years ago is the Low and No Bus program under FTA 5339. Although we weren't successful last year very much in California, only one winner. We were very successful in the second program under 5339. We were the #1 winner throughout the country. So I can't figure out why on one we came in so low and why on the other one we were the #1. So it's very interesting. But certainly this funding is really good for somebody who's starting out their first bus fleet. They don't want to do too many repeats here on funding. We expect that there'll be up to $85 million available. We think the RFP for this will be out either as early as March or as late as May. As soon as we hear a CR or a budget that provides 12-year funding, there will be 30 days delay and the NOFA will be out in the street. So keep your eyes, and if this February 15th thing ends up with an annual budget, we're going to see the NOFA pretty fast here. The funds include a lot, including leased equipment, infrastructure, vehicles, what's really nice, it allows you to partner with these wonderful consultants that we saw are necessary for you to do really smart planning and get the job done well here. So you can actually choose acquisition is real easy. You can choose a partnership with a bus maker. You can choose a partner with consultants, and you can all propose as a team. Should you win, you don't have to go through the FTA acquisition process. And should you even get fewer dollars, so I know last year and a couple of years ago, some of the folks got downsized on their requests. They were still able to go forward with the full amount of buses they wanted to buy. So if you only get funding for 5 buses, but you propose 29, and you find the funding for the 29, you could still buy the full 29 buses without going through the whole FTA acquisition process. So it's a really, one of the real benefits of the program is the acquisition process, pre-award authorization as soon as you're selected for the program. Last year, there were 51 projects selected. Average award was about $1.6 million up to $2,300,000 was the highest amount. For those rural properties or smaller properties, there's a tremendous priority given by the administration since they're discretionary grants on the smaller and rural properties. In fact, last year, 40% of all the funding went to rural properties around the country. So if there's a rural property, there's a good chance if you have a decent proposal here, there's a high probability of success as a smaller property. You can stack these fundings with other FTA monies. So if you wanted, in order to be competitive, you most probably will have to bid on using your formula funds for the base bus, using some of the money from the FTA loan and putting for an increment, and then throwing HVIP on top of that. So this is kind of a stack program to be competitive, and you say and that's the best way for you to be competitive, to stack these funds and take advantage of all the funds available, so that you can be competitive. Because otherwise, it's hard. You may just be funded for one bus. That's not going to really do very much. So very exciting program. On the next slide, there you go. This is available to you just to make it a little easier for you. I've provided you with a list of all the partners so that you can at least walk down the tick list and say, who do I want to partner with? Okay, this will again be available to you, so we don't need to go through this list, but I just want to make sure you have access to the emails, the names, and the companies that are have been most successful and probably most logical for you to consider partnering with. The third program from the FTA is the Bus and Bus Facilities Infrastructure Investment Program, another discretionary program, upwards of $370 million likely to be available for that program. It is not specifically based on any particular fuel per se, but there is a lot of emphasis on maintaining a state of good repair. And often folks will replay their proposals on the Lono. It's not that indifferent. It's really efficient to play both cards, but if you want to go zero, but you can also go with natural gas and some of the other fuels and facilities. And this is really good if you are in a place where you have buses that aren't really doing well, facilities that are starting to age. This is a really great place where they give you a lot of extra points for proposing those kind of state of good repair activities. So got the name of the person there, the phone number, and the NOFA likely in July. Again, these are very fast programs. So the third program I'm going to talk about is a very exciting project that the state of California has initiated back in the summer. It's a statewide procurement of zero-emission buses. So they have been working with a number of the experts in this audience here and others that are fleets that have helped them design an RFP that is consistent with the FTA requirements. We're likely, I think, to be multiple bus providers, bus options, and infrastructure in that grant. We'll see it when it comes out. Right now, there was an RFI back, I think, in October, just to kind of get some feedback on the initial specifications. There's a final review right now, so those experts in the room here that are part of this effort, please look for your emails and respond to the DGS to review the final RFP that's going to be going out in the street in about 3 weeks. And that'll be about 6 weeks or so for the review of that, and we expect by May time, we hope that there will be an offering that you can just buy vehicles that meet the state requirements, the FTA requirements, right off of a statewide procurement list. So are the folks from DGS here in the audience? Why don't you stand up for a second? And, gentlemen back there, the two people there. Everybody likes you, so please keep your eyes open for that activity. And those experts in the room, please, they need your help to review the last RFQ before it goes out in the street. So at this point, don't see who's next, but I'll just go to my left here and let you introduce yourself and let us know what funding you have available.
Good afternoon.
Let's try again. Good afternoon. I'm Kyle Pratt. I'm a supervisor in the California Energy Commission's Fuels and Transportation Division. Today, I'll be very briefly overviewing two programs that the Energy Commission administers, sometimes in partnership with other entities. They are the Alternative and Renewable Fuel and Vehicle Technology Program, or ARFVTP, and the Electric Program Investment Charge, or EPIC. Next slide, please. So I won't read this out to you, but you can see the policy framework for the ARFVTP. It was established by statute. It uses surcharges on vehicle registrations to fund technology demonstrations in various areas. And, thank you. And currently for both programs, ARFVTP and EPIC, there are no currently available or near-term planned opportunities specifically targeted to transit buses, but such projects have been funded in the past, and I can talk about those a bit if there's time. But for your information, this slide does show some funding areas that are on the horizon for ARFVTP. And I'll go into more detail later in this presentation for how you can get updated and learn about new developments and new concepts for funding opportunities for both programs. Very briefly here are pages you can go to look at ARFVTP. You will have access to these slides later. Googling works pretty well. The Energy Commission site is relatively user-friendly, and you'll see similar program information listed for ARFVTP and EPIC. So EPIC was established more recently. It's overseen by the Public Utilities Commission and administered by the Energy Commission, as well as the three large investor-owned utilities. It's from a public investor-owned utility surcharges, and it is to fund innovative technologies either in the advanced research or the full-scale demonstration phase. And a couple of projects involving transit buses have been funded by EPIC in the past. Then for your future self, your future reference, you have the links right here directly to the respective pages. Now, signing up to the Energy Commission list servers is the best way to be up to speed on new developments for funding opportunities and workshops, requests for information generally. It's a pretty user-friendly page. The topic areas sort of usefully overlap. Whenever a public notice is given out, it's usually a small handful of different lists that are relevant that the public notice document and other materials are tagged with. So it's quite easy to sign up, and you'll get notified of opportunities to participate in various kinds of workshops to support funding opportunities. Quite frequently, we hold scoping workshops where we might show draft solicitation material and open it for stakeholder input. And then when a full solicitation is ready to go out, we have a pre-bid workshop. So stakeholders or potential interested applicants can ask detailed questions about how to apply. Again, I've went over two programs, but from the public or applicant point of view, they are administered in a pretty similar way. There's noticing in advance of workshops. There's the posted solicitation manuals with the guidelines spelled out right there. Often there are templates for the applications that you would fill in. And often the solicitations have detailed particular features that are discussed and highlighted in these workshops. There's also a compiled written questions and answers document that tends to go with these workshops. So anyone interested in applying can see what questions others have asked and be fully informed about the opportunities. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Hi, I'm Kyle Gradinger, spelled the other way. I'm the Assistant Division Chief of the Caltrans Division of Rail and Mass Transit. Actually, I'm the TIRCP. can just switch. Perfect. All right, thank you. All right, so I'm Kyle Gradinger. I'm the Assistant Division Chief for the Caltrans Division of Rail and Mass Transportation, and I'm going to talk about the Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program. Is that working? Will it advance? All right, I'll try to do this. It's every performer's nightmare. So the Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program is a program of the California State Transportation Agency, and it's administered by Caltrans, the Division of Rail Mass Transit. And the purpose of the TIRCP program is to provide transformative investments in rail and transit that drive ridership and decrease greenhouse gas emissions. There we go. So a couple of the program objectives, as I mentioned, first purpose is to reduce GHG emissions, to expand and improve transit and rail service to increase ridership, and to improve system integration so that the services that are out there are more seamless for the users, and to improve safety. And then secondarily, we also want the program to benefit disadvantaged and low-income communities, ensure that there's multi-agency coordination so that we're not duplicating investment, provide geographic equity in the investment as well, and also an ancillary benefit would be to provide benefits to freight movement. We just awarded the third cycle of the program in 2018, and so you can see here we've now, over the first three cycles beginning in 2015, awarded over $3 billion for transit and rail capital projects across the state. The funding for this program is a combination of GGRF and SB1 sources. It started off originally as GGRF with a portion of cap and trade auction proceeds, and then through Senate Bill 1, an additional $300 million per year has been added to the program. Out of the three cycles so far, we have 56 total awards that are leveraging nearly $25 billion in total projects across the state. And 52 of those 54 projects are contributing direct and meaningful benefits to disadvantaged communities. And just a calculation we ran this morning, the number of ZEB buses that were funded in the first three cycles now exceeds 300, 282 buses alone in the last award cycle announced last April. And you see in the bottom line there, we've split out 2018. The program has the ability to fund multi-year awards, sort of like an FTA, full funding grant agreement, that we are able to support projects that are going to take more than the usual 5 years to develop. So things like extending the BART to San Jose and some major investment in commuter rail in Los Angeles, we're allowed to dedicate that funding to out years in the funding stream, years 6 through 10. So that's why that's broken out there. An example of some of the things that were awarded in this last round, as I mentioned, nearly 300 new ZEV buses across the state, 28 light rail vehicles, 272 new BART vehicles. On top of that, another 80 commuter and intercity rail coaches. We've funded transit and rail route extensions, service frequency increases, BRT and hot lane bus projects on corridors that were identified in CTC's Solutions for Congested Corridors program. We've also funded an integrated travel program where we are seeking at the state level to unify travel planning and fare payment for users, and then deliver the cost savings to the transit agencies as well. And then a lot of these awards also included a network integration component, and that's additional planning funding intended to make sure that these investments are providing that seamless user system. In terms of the bus procurement projects that were awarded over the last three cycles, to Antelope Valley Transit Authority, we've awarded over 61 zero-emission electric vehicles and supporting infrastructure. The LADOT was awarded funding for 112 zero-emission battery electric buses in the last round for their Dash circulator service. We're working with Shasta Regional Transportation Agency to fund 7 battery electric intercity coach buses, and I heard a comment in the last panel about range, and that's what's great about this program is that it's allowing us to fund projects and then get in and tackle some of the real issues. So the idea of running an intercity bus, battery electric bus from Reading to Sacramento, a 3-hour run, is one where we're getting a lot of cooperation from from Shasta as well as the manufacturing industry. Anaheim Transportation Network, we funded 40 zero-emission electric buses and 10 zero-emission microcruisers. And with AC Transit, we're going to be funding 45 zero-emission buses and supporting infrastructure. And as part of the network integration, we're working with AC Transit now to take this investment in new electric buses and to enhance the service that is currently offered today by the Capital Corridor between Emeryville and San Francisco Transbay. We want to work with AC Transit to redesign AC Transit service to provide that service in the future so that we can reduce the throughway bus contracting costs for the Capital Corridor and kind of kill two birds with one stone. That's another part of the flexibility of this program. So coming up, we'll have our next cycle, cycle 4. We'll start gearing up for that this summer. Please ignore the number that you see at the top of the slide. I didn't get a chance to edit that out. But a quick breakdown of the funding. As I mentioned, there's $300 million a year through SB1 going into this program, and then we get a portion of the cap and trade auction proceeds. And so, depending on how well those are going right now, we're thinking we're looking at somewhere in the range of $200 to $300 million per year from GGRF auctions. So you could assume that it's about somewhere between $750 million and $1 billion per year, and it's a 2-year cycle. So the next award, you can start to think of the numbers, but again, that's highly dependent on auction proceeds and also the out-year budgeting of those multi-year projects that I described earlier. So you don't just add the numbers straight up and get the total for what's available next time, but it gives you a sense of the funding sources and the potential amounts. So the schedule for the upcoming solicitation for the next cycle 4. We will begin the process this summer with TIRCP guidelines workshops. By late summer 2019, we'll develop the final guidelines, publish those, and put out the call for projects. At that time, CalSTA and Caltrans Rail and Transit staff would like to go out and meet with potential applicants and help to refine the concepts for applications, those applications would then be due, we're thinking just before the Christmas holidays, December 2019, and with a target for award announcement by April 1st of 2020. I believe that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for all those zero-emission buses.
While they're getting that up, welcome. I see a lot of familiar faces. My name is Ahmad, and I am responsible for the Low Carbon Transit Operations Program under Kyle, formerly kind of known as LCTOP. And so with LCTOP, it's a partner program with TIRCP. It was started back in 2014 as part of the Transit Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities programs. And so LCTOP receives about 5% of the total cap and trade proceeds. Part of LCTOP's goals here are really to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We provide operating and capital assistance for transit agencies with a priority on benefiting disadvantaged communities. Part of the qualifications for LCTOP would be to make sure that agencies have a project that aligns with expanded transit service, bus or rail service, new service, waterborne transit, any costs associated with that. Could be fueling, could be maintenance, could be a transit center. Some of the projects that we have also funded fall into operating expenditures for increased mode share, and then we have projects that really align with what we're here to talk about today, zero-emission buses, and so that could be the buses, infrastructure, we have charging stations, and then support for the buses. Who's eligible for LCTOP? So agencies that are eligible are going to be based off of the State Transit Assistance Fund list, and that could be based off of the codes of PUC 99313 or 314. So we have regional operators, and then, regional agencies, and then their operators. The way LCTOP is broken up is divided into 2 pots. So 50% go to the region, 50% go to the operators. To date, so we are now going into our 5th year of funding for LCTOP. We have awarded over 500 projects thus far, totaling $230 million. We have a good breakdown of operating and capital projects. Some of the operating projects that we have seen are transit passes for students throughout the state, particularly in Orange County. We have service to national parks, Joshua Tree, Yosemite. We have Commuter Express. We have expanded night and weekend service down in Fresno. For our capital portions, we have an uptick right now in zero-emission procurements. So we have electric buses. San Diego right now is doing a pilot project for some hydrogen buses. We have quite a bit of projects that are moving towards infrastructure. So agencies are looking at how to get to meet the goals of going zero emission. And so they're starting with that infrastructure, charging, and looking at what they're going to be building out. Some agencies are also going into solar charging, solar lighting. A quick count that we did yesterday, we have about $30 million in zero emission right now. So the last 2 years, again, we've seen a greater amount of agencies coming in for procurement type projects. To get funding, so for LCTOP, we have something that's called an allocation request. This is non-competitive funding, so again, it's based off of formula funding. Annually, we're going out for an award. The State Controller's Office will come out with the apportionment for the year. So for 18-19 right now, just on Friday, the State Controllers announced $147 million. Trans agencies who are eligible for funding need to submit their allocation requests towards the end of March. This is very similar to the last couple of years that we have had, where our funding goes out in January, we start working with our agencies, and then they're going to come in to submit by March. We do a concurrent approval, so what that means is Caltrans staff and CARB staff both review these projects. We're making sure that the projects have an estimated positive reduction for GHGs. These are 3 pictures that we have that agencies who are familiar with this program might have seen before. So we have first picture is our allocation request or application, and then we have the other component, which is qualifying your project to make sure that you have that GHG reduction. And then you have your maps where agencies are going to identify if their transit area has a disadvantaged community or a low-income community or household. So again, as a reminder, we're focusing on providing direct and meaningful benefit to our priority populations. And so agencies will go in and look at CalEnviroscreen 3.0 to determine their particular communities and how the projects will benefit. For zero emission, we're looking at service-wide benefits towards our communities, and my staff is able to really work with the trans agencies to tease out how they talk about those benefits. Upcoming workshops. So we've already started our workshops for the allocation request for 18-19. We've done 3 thus far. We have 3 more. We kind of space them out a little bit and seeing where the needs are. So we're going down to Gardena this week. I have some staff going down, and then we have San Bernardino in a couple of weeks, and then we're finishing up in Chico, and that will be a webcast. So for agencies that maybe missed the workshop or need a refresher, they can go in and check out the webcast. Again, this is non-competitive funding, so if you have any questions on LCTOP, if you're a trans agency looking to figure out if your project's going to qualify, you can give myself or my staff a call. We do great work on trying to figure out what your agency wants to do with the funds. Here's my contact list, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Nuremberg with the Sacramento Quality Management District, and I'm going to be talking about state and local funding opportunities as well, and also kind of discussing incentives from air districts across the state of California at the same time. So I guess we got the slide here. I'm actually as well, I'm a program supervisor at the Air Quality District, and I oversee a lot of the incentives and contract funds from there. So that's kind of where my background is, and been doing that for a period of time now. So we'll talk briefly here. I've just got a few slides here that kind of talk about the opportunities from the state level here. We'll talk about funding from both state and a local perspective. So depending upon where your transit fleet actually operates, I would encourage you not look at the state funding opportunities, but also to contact your local air district, wherever that jurisdiction may be, because they probably would have funding available for your transit operations. We'll also be touching on to zero-emission buses availability, and of course, I'll go quickly over that because I think you can see there's examples outside as well as other presentations. Clearly, there's buses available. I'll also discuss a little bit about the regional push we have within the Sacramento region and the surrounding counties we have around here, and then the statewide push as well to go towards ZEB technology. First off, this is probably the most important slide for you from a general standpoint. From the state standpoint, the Volkswagen funds, they're going to actually be administered, their Volkswagen funds are actually going to be administered from 3 different air districts, but for the purposes of the discussion today, the San Joaquin Air District is going to be the one that's going to be managing the transit fleet and school bus fleet operations. It's going to be in $65 million allotments, I think, split over 2 different phases, but the total pot is $130 million. As you can see on the slide, battery electric transit buses will receive up to $180,000. Fuel cells transit buses would be $400,000, school buses would be up to $400,000, and then the shuttle bus or microtransit type shuttles would be up to $160,000. They're going to be doing applications on first come, first served basis. And they're still working through the contract elements right now with ARB, but they're anticipating having that opening up the summer of 2019. So there'll be more information coming out from them as that gets further along. So I'd encourage you to stay in touch with both ARB and with San Joaquin regarding that information there. And if it's something of interest to you, I certainly would encourage you to jump on that as soon as you can from that standpoint. So that's for with the Volkswagen funds. The community air protection funds, we're moving into year 2 funds. The year 1 funds are fairly well allocated out, but this is $245 million that's going to be distributed by ARB. They come from the greenhouse gas reduction funding, and it's going to be going to several air districts here coming up in year 2. Those funding allocations are still being discussed and going to be reviewed later on here. But once again, that's going to be funding that's available to probably some of the larger air districts. It'll also have a disadvantaged community component focus on there as well. But, what ties into there is those funds are going to be working primarily off the Carl Moyer funding program, which for some of you may be familiar with it. The Carl Moyer program funds have been around for about 20 years now. They're well-established guidelines, and both of those funding streams are going to be working off similar guidelines. And then many of the air districts also have local DMV funds that will also be available to help out. Probably for those last 3 funding streams I have, they'll probably be more so used in the infrastructure element, but they can also help offset vehicle costs. And they are stackable, as I would refer to. They can be matched up with HVIP, and probably some other funding streams as well, depending upon those funding sources. So, it'd be kind of a potpourri of different funding allocations that you work with to move forward on that. So, once again, you'll see there's just some samples there of anywhere from a double-decker bus to regular size, more of a shuttle van, and then I actually threw in a school bus here as well for some of you who may be operating transit operations as well. Even the school buses, there are some now that are available that have 150-plus mile range. So even if you're operating up in rural areas or operating in the hilly regions, those buses may very well be capable of meeting your needs from that standpoint there. So, and there, of course, there's fuel cell buses that are available as well that are on the market as we speak. So, so I want to talk just a little bit about what's happening in the Sacramento region as well. One of the things that happens from a funding standpoint is we do have to work with developing strong partnerships. Beyond just the local air district, we also work with our regional SACOG, which is Sacramento Area Council of Governments. We've also been working with the City of Sacramento and County of Sacramento to be working towards zero-emission deployment, as I would refer to. So not just with the zero-emission transit buses, but also just looking at reducing GHG and moving towards zero-emission environment. Because of some of the efforts, even from our own local agency, we've been working now closely with regional transit, and they're now starting to become a champion in ZEB technology. We currently have an application form to do 20 buses. They're going to be probably a combination of micro shuttles and some of the long buses currently in our books. They are looking at using what we call innovative transit, using micro shuttles where they can address more of the local needs, where maybe it's not a full-size bus that's needed, and maybe those little smaller micro shuttle buses can address going into communities that maybe are not receiving full service at this point. So that's something that's come out of the partnerships that we've had working with regional transit, and it helps address more of the community needs, and also it helps address some of the concerns that have been brought up in the disadvantaged communities where maybe they don't have quite the normal transit service and the availability to move people from one spot to another. So they've been working towards that. We've also, there is a high interest right now to one of the highest usage lines that's occurring here in the Sacramento region, which is on the Stockton Boulevard route, to make that in a completely electric line. And it's got a high usage and high number of buses that would be going through there, as well as a high number of passengers, and so we're trying to move forward with that. All of that comes together with districts that are leveraging local dollars, so it's not only the air district funds, but also the regional COGS, and trying to work with the city and county fleets, and of course any federal funds that we can receive. We would like to work from that angle as well. We've also had a couple other initiatives that we're working with as well, just to kind of touch upon a little bit. The SAC Forward initiative is something that's looking at zero-emission technologies throughout the region. We're working with like Ride Hail and car share partners, even the electric bikes like the Jump Bike that's been floating around here. They all tie into the transit picture, because the transit buses may get you from one spot to another, and then some of these other functions or options allow people to get maybe to their final destination. And so whether there's say a car share type element that's available at the end of a transit ride, or whether there's a bike or a scooter or something else, these are all the zero mobility options that all kind of tie in together. And so that's part of the big picture that we all look at here from a local perspective. And then between City of Sacramento and City of West Sacramento, the mayors have gotten together and they're working on a Climate Commission proposal. They would like to have both of these two cities, they're moving towards a net zero carbon reduction by 2045. And so there's some goals along that line to touch upon that. So we wanted to kind of just touch on the big picture as well, besides just the funding opportunities here. And of course, the state's also pushing forward as well, as I touched upon a little bit with the AB 617 efforts. That actually involves being involved with the community. This is something that over the last year and a half, this bill was approved by the state, and it's changed how both ARB and how the local air districts interact with the communities. We are doing a lot more community outreach and focus groups. We're outreaching to those communities to understand and address the local needs that are related to air quality, transit issues, providing a healthier and better environment for them. And so as part of that, that's partly the push towards zero-emission buses, because that's one of the elements that is being brought up from those community meetings. And of course, ARB is also working on a rule for zero-emission bus deployment. They are already in those stages here, and so that's one of the other functions that Air Resources Board is doing from that end. So with that in mind, there is my contact information, and I will gladly toss this over to my next person.
See here. Can I get some help advancing it? I'll just introduce myself. My name is Tara Campy, and I'm the program manager for the Hybrid and Zero Emission Truck and Bus Voucher Incentive Project, better known as HVIP, working for CalSTART. We are an organization that works to accelerate clean transportation technology and provide policy leadership and program administration in California and throughout many areas of the United States. So I'm here today to specifically talk about zero-emission bus voucher incentive options through HVIP. So I know several of you are familiar with the HVIP program and are probably a number of existing participants in the room, so thank you for your collaborations. HVIP is a first come, first served voucher incentive opportunity. So it offers immediate discount at the point of sale. Another benefit is that dealers learn how to process the voucher system and do most of the administrative work, working in partnership with CalSTART and our partners at Tetra Tech. So that provides fewer complications for the fleets and moves the administrative work to the dealers, OEMs, and then CalSTART and our partners. And there's set aside funding for each voucher, which allows price certainty at the time of the request. This is cap and trade money that is flowing from CARB, and we have on the website, which I listed on the first slide, and I'll go back and show it again, the website provides a ticker of regular updates on the amount of funding available in the system. The vouchers are available for new and retrofits and covering electric, hybrid, fuel cell, EPTO, and low NOx natural gas technologies. The program was funded 9 years ago. The paperwork started to flow 10 years ago, so there's some back and forth on when is actually our 10th anniversary, but we are celebrating the 10th anniversary next year, which is when the first voucher was issued. So for the record, that's when we're celebrating the 10th anniversary, so stay tuned for that. But we have issued over 6,500 vouchers and working with over 1,000 fleets. This table shows the transit bus voucher amount specifically. They range from $80,000 for 20 to 24 foot outside of a disadvantaged community. As you can see, there's clear allocations based on whether you're in a disadvantaged community or not, all the way up to 315 for greater than 40-foot hydrogen fuel cell. And combining HVIP with other incentives can cover up to 100% of vehicle costs for public fleets and 90% for private fleets. The incentive amounts are evaluated and updated yearly as needed. This slide shows a variety of our eligible vehicles. We've got buses here from Gillig, BYD, Proterra, and others. We have a dealer catalog of eligible vehicles that is updated regularly in partnership with CalSTART and ARB staff, so that that vehicle catalog is very up-to-date and dynamic, so I encourage you to visit the website to check that out. And the dealer and the vehicle do have to be HVIP eligible, which goes back to, as I mentioned, the administrative work being kind of removed from the end user fleet. So we work closely with the dealers to facilitate that process, and that's why they need to be eligible and certified as a participant in the program. We also offer infrastructure voucher enhancements. The EVSE enhancement is up to $30,000 per battery electric vehicle voucher that's already in the system. It covers hardware, load management software, energy storage. It doesn't apply to labor or utility upgrades. It's essentially a pass-through of that hardware cost. Also, hydrogen voucher enhancements up to $100,000. Again, it covers the real cost of equipment, and for that, you have to have at least 5 vehicle vouchers in process. And for all of the enhancements, the infrastructure costs can already be covered by another funding source. These are just starting to roll in, and they are approved on a case-by-case basis. We're working to really codify how those infrastructure voucher requests come into us, so we will have an application form coming out soon. That's pretty much just short and sweet, gathering the necessary information about what the job entails, timeline, scope, and deliverables, and then a breakdown of showing the proof of payment and proof of installation when it comes to the point of redemption. But for now, they are issued simply by email, and I'll show that email address again. So it's pretty simple. I think that's all I have, so I'll go back to the first slide so that you can get a look at our contact information. I'm new to this role. I've been with CalStart since December, so I look forward to continuing to meet and work with those of you in the room, those of you I haven't met. So again, Tara Campy, thanks for having me today.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Manisha Singh. I'm manager of the fuel section at California Air Resources Board and one of the managers overseeing the LCFS programs, crediting and reporting program. So in today's presentation, I'm going to share with you some of the exciting opportunities that the Low Carbon Fuel Standard Program provides for transit agencies. But before I do so, I'm going to take a few moments to provide a little brief history and background on the LCFS program. All right, so a little bit of history. The program was originally adopted in 2009, and we had some amendments in 2011. And then the program was re-adopted in 2016 to address some procedural issues. But recently, last year in 2018, the board adopted amendments to the LCFS program that were geared to strengthen the program and have more stringent targets all the way through 2030. So we have a reduction goal of about 20% of carbon intensity reduction from all transportation fuels in California by 2030. And this aligns with the continued reduction of greenhouse gas emissions that the governor has set through SB 32 for 2030. Along with the reduction in carbon intensity, low carbon fuel standard has some other benefits as well. It provides for diversity of fuel pool in California, reducing the petroleum dependency, as well as it provides air quality benefits to California residents. So how does the program work? The mechanics are very simple. We have annual carbon intensity benchmarks for each year, and all fuels in California that have a carbon intensity higher than the CI benchmark for that year generates deficits in the program. And typically these are petroleum fuels like gasoline and diesel. And the fuels that are carbon intensity lower carbon intensity fuels, alternatives to diesel and carbob and gasoline, they generate credits. And basically the compliance is determined by providing and retiring credits to match deficits for each credit, for each fuel supplier. The program is continuing, as I said, with a 20% CI reduction target post-2030. This chart shows the historic credit market information. As you can see, through the years, there has been an active credit market, but recently, in the last year, in 2018, we really had a highly, functioning and very lucrative credit market. We had over $13 million worth of credits traded in the market last year in about 1,700 transactions. And in the last year, the average price for the credits was at $180 per metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalent. I like to add that, in the new year, in 2019, we have seen trades as high as $190 and a few even touching $200 per metric ton in January. So what does the program offer transit agencies? Transit agencies, being providers of low carbon fuels like electricity and hydrogen, are credit generators in the program. For all the electric buses, the transit agencies have already been participating so far in the program. But starting 2019, through the amendments that were approved last year, we have now added hydrogen fueling infrastructure owners, the station owners for hydrogen, also as credit generators in our program. So they can start participating starting this year. Credits that are generated in our program, they do not expire, and they can be banked or traded in the market in all of the subsequent years, through 2030 and beyond. So this slide shows some illustrative examples of. Actually, I just wanted to let you all know that the participation in the program is very, very simple. Pretty much, there is a requirement for all of those transit agencies who wanted to participate in the program in an optional basis to come and register in what we call the LCFS reporting tool. Then once into the program, you are required to submit reports to California Air Resources Board, every quarter, and based upon, the timely submission of the reports, and there's a schedule given here, credits are generated 4 times a year on a quarterly cycle. There is a requirement for filing annual reports, which just tells us how many credits you generated, how many you traded in the market, and gives us the information overall for the annual participation in the program. Again, credits can be banked, they can be rolled over to the subsequent years, and are available to be traded to others that are participating in the market. And petroleum providers are the primary purchasers of these credits. So here are some values. This is a table that shows approximate credit revenues that different types of transit buses, depending upon the kind of fuel they are utilizing, can generate in 2019. For an electric bus, as well as for hydrogen fuel cell buses, we see here that the revenues can range from all the way to about $8,000 per year to as high as $25,000 per year, especially if the fuel that is being provided is a low carbon pathway. For example, for hydrogen, we have a generic lookup table pathway from methane reformation, but if you have electrolysis-based hydrogen generation process, then you can generate more credits that translate into much higher revenue. And same is true for electricity. If you have a solar installation on site, you could generate zero carbon electricity, and that can give you much higher value in our program than if you were plugging into the regular California grid mix. So it's a very exciting time here. We have extended the program and made it more stringent through 2030, and the credit market is at the peak of its activity. And so, we hope, that you would take the opportunity and participate in our program. I did bring some registration forms for our program. They are available in the ARB booth outside. But if you have any questions regarding participation in the program, feel free to reach out to CARB staff. We're going to include the contact information with the slide deck. Feel free, to ask us. It's a very simple registration process, and then the only requirement we have is for you to meter the amount of electricity that's being used in the buses or the amount of hydrogen that's being dispensed to the buses. And with those amounts, filed with us on a quarterly basis, credits could be issued and then, traded in the market. Well, this is my contact information, and, happy to engage with all of those, who are interested in knowing more about the program. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. What a team here of funding partners. There are a couple of projects that I thought I might have get overlooked. One is Caltrans Caltrans offers a planning grant. We've heard here today, plan, and then plan, and plan early. Help us, is that going to be available next year, the community and sustainability grants? And I think they're like $30 million a year, is that right?
I'm not the expert on that program. The next cycle is coming up. I don't know if Amar knows more, but I think that's coming up in the next few months, and I believe those are administered through the Division of Transportation Planning at Caltrans.
And I think that's a great way for those, especially those that aren't ready to jump in and buy a bus yet, but are starting to wonder about, I have to get to 100% or I'm going to do it. now's the time to do it because these sustainability grants, I think you can actually get funded and get the consultants that you need to do the work without really impacting your daily operations and really have a good sense of what's going on. So I'd encourage you to look out for the, if there's a lift server or Caltrans, it'd be great on that, but they're checking on the Caltrans planning grants. The other funding opportunity, I think the Central Valley offers a wonderful program called the Truck and Bus Replacement Program, a very sizable program. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with it. For those who are in the Central Valley of California, I think the project funding for incentives is equal to that of HVIP money, roughly, a rough order of magnitude. So it's another slug of funds that are available to those properties in the Central Valley. And it's, I think to some degree, there's always an issue with how much you can stack on HVIP because you can't stack more and get more money than the vehicle's worth or get more than the base. There's just a little bit of complexity there, and one day we'll have the language down to explain that really well to you. But it is stackable with HVIP, so you can add money on to the HVIP program with the truck and bus replacement program. So, so I don't want to hold back from questions here before I ask any questions. Do we have any questions from the audience here of our panel in the back? Yeah, please let us know who you are. You have your hand up. The white. Yes.
Hi, I'm Tenley from CalAct. I'm wondering if at this point there's any considerations in the future to plan to allocate any funding directly to 5311 agencies. And I should have premised that with I compartmentalize 5311 versus 5311 and 537 recipients. But for some of these agencies that full funding sources give $4 million a year, I don't see them in any way being able to meet any requirements under ICT. And when we see the competitive programs, it's kind of a continuation of what we've seen in the past, where the same, no offense anybody, the same agencies get the grants and then the smaller guys don't necessarily get the grants. So are there any plans, and I know you had mentioned 5311 through the Low-No program
Right.
is getting a lot of consideration, but are we getting that at the state level?
Our state folks talk about that? If not, is there a way to how would that community like CalAct represents a lot of these small, how would they weigh in? I mean, I had the same question. So how does the industry weigh in? So on this one, I also believe there's a need. In fact, we have a new 5311 transit manager at CalSTART. When you raise your hand, Jared. So CalSTART has hired a full-time person to support small and rural properties, and he's here today, just started last week. We think it's also important. So maybe you can tell us, how would we weigh in to make sure these folks, are there meetings or public events, or what's the best way to do that?
I think for funding, and if we're looking at just specifically cap and trade funding, there's always opportunities to have agencies really submit their comments and interest on getting greater funding towards rural communities. For Caltrans and LCTOP, like it's not competitive program, so anybody who's on the list, any trans agencies, they'll get a small apportionment, especially for our rural communities, and it's really up to these small communities to communicate with their regional providers to kind of group their funding together. What we've seen in the past, like down in Kern County, we have an agency that pulled some of the other agencies' monies into one project, and so they're able to really do some type of trade out on their own. But they're flexible, and if an agency doesn't have a project in one particular year, they can pull other funding sources or other agencies' monies for LCTOP. We've also have an opportunity for agencies to do a rollover in funds for their said project, and we see this for capital projects. If an agency is looking at procuring zero-emission fleets and they don't have enough money in one particular allocation, they can roll it over for up to 4 years. So we have agencies pulling different funding sources on a particular bus and holding their money for 4 years, coming in for that allocation request under LCTOP to garner enough funds for a particular bus. So that's what I have to offer.
look at some of the agencies they're getting under LCTOP 68,000, and even if you roll over that, and I'm thinking of 5311, even if you roll that over for a number of years, it's not going to offset the cost of any type of zero emission. So it's just kind of, we're at that impetus where what are we going to do, and how do we do it so the rural agencies aren't reaching out to ARB after 2026 because they can't comply because there just isn't enough money to move forward.
Yeah, I think the state has a 5311 person. Is it Mark Langhorn? Is that his name? James Langhorn?
James Ogmana.
And it would be nice, there's somebody here at the state level I know that is responsible for 53 at the state to actually propose. In fact, if you're going to propose for funding from the feds, you have to go through the state, and there's an aggregator. It would be good at the Coronado event to maybe rally around, and we'd love to be a part of that discussion to help figure out how the smaller properties can get a little bit better assistance on this.
Yeah, and I could chime in here as well, because I think also there's two different ways you can, as I just talked about also with the VW funding, that's actually available throughout the state. So rural agencies as well as large agencies can apply for that, and obviously there is funding going towards that. I would also would recommend that you work through your local air districts as well, because they also may have funding available. All of the air districts do get some Moyer funding each year. Now, some of the air districts that are in more of the rural areas may not get a lot of Moyer funding, but they may have some. And then, so I would say work through your local agencies as well as also look at that VW fund. There is, $130 million that's available coming out of that pot as well. So,
Thank you, guys.
Do we have other questions? Yes, please identify who you are.
Hi, I'm Bruce Farrell with AECom. Over the last year, we worked with a couple of clients, transit agencies, who were interested in PG&E's Fleet Ready program. And I'm just curious if anybody, in the room knows what the status of that program is, and whether their filing for bankruptcy is pretty much just sort of sent that off into the...
I think tomorrow there's a utility utility panel, and I would hope they could address that tomorrow. I don't know if that's under a cloak of secrecy or not, but...
Yes, in tomorrow's session 5, we are going to be talking about major utilities programs, including PG&E's program. So just stay tuned and come back tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
We have a question here. Identify yourself, please.
Russell Vare with Nuvi. We're a vehicle-to-grid technology company, and I had a question on the LCFS credits. You mentioned with this additional funds available with the solar, can you tell how that's metered? Are you metering that through just the utility meter or through the EVSE or vehicle? Like, are there requirements for reporting, I guess, that you can expand on?
Right, and so for the transit agencies, if you have a telematics, or a meter on the bus, that would work. Any device that could measure the electricity that is being used for charging, we're pretty flexible with allowing the metering through that.
We have some other questions. We have a question here.
Hi, this is for Manisha. What credit dollar amount were you using in that one of the charts that you showed that showed $21,000 per bus per year for the LCSF credit?
Let me go back. I believe the illustrative numbers. I just want to check. It was most likely calculated at $200 metric ton per metric ton value, and we have seen some of those trades come through recently.
Yeah, I would just add to that, I think that's terrific, and it's obviously possible today. But generally, when CARB's talked about LCF credit values, the assumption has been is a $100 level, and it is a market. It can go up, it certainly can go up or down, but obviously at today's level, and it's capped at $200, I believe, isn't it? It cannot go higher than $200?
We do not have a hard cap, but there is a secondary clearance market which caps the dollar value at 200, but it is inflation adjusted every year. So it was $208, last year.
If I were a transit agency, I'd plan on an assumption of maybe $10,000 or something like that. But the reality today is it's tremendous. You can get $20,000 per bus per year for using a grid electricity. It's huge. Thank you.
Right. I just wanted to mention on the website, we have an illustrative credit revenue calculator available, and you can play with different prices of credits and different values for the carbon scores, depending upon what kind of electricity you might be using, or fuel cell, vehicle hydrogen pathways. So certainly make use of that, and every year the standards are different, and so the number of credits that you could generate vary through the years as well. But it's been very exciting lately with very high credit values.
Okay. I have a question for especially Energy Commission and CARB here. Each year there's an investment plan that comes out on your programs, and transit seems to be falling off the list of investments. I think there's a real need for, I personally think there's a need for some researchy stuff, especially in the infrastructure space and maybe in advanced vehicles on the EV side. How does the industry, what is the opportunity there? How does one go about weighing into the investment plan at CARB and the CEC? And are you seeing folks from this industry actually show up and to tell you that there's a need for that?
No, we have a workshop.
Can you tell us about this and how they can?
No, as far as low carbon transportation investment plan, we have a workshop coming up pretty soon to talk about fiscal year funding for 2019-20. And so that is the way to chime in and get your input into our next round of funding for low carbon transportation.
Okay, and if people don't show up, they don't hear from you. So if there's a need for this stuff, you need to be there. On the CEC, do you have something similar? Or?
For the two programs, yes, we have investment plans. For ARFVTP, it is an annual investment plan. For EPIC, they are once every 3 years. And so they're posted on our websites. You can sign up to the list server to be informed of that, just as for solicitations. It is a stakeholder process. For ARFVTP, there is an advisory committee, but there's also public involvement in all of this. And you need not be at workshops necessarily. There are dockets of written comments and other supporting materials for these investment plans. So you could always submit a written comment, and that will appear on the docket and be viewable to others.
Yeah, I have a question for Manisha. In the, Jamie Levin with CT. So in the chart, in the table, you have 22 cents per mile for hydrogen, and that's based on a fuel economy of 6.5 miles per kilogram. But we're actually, with the new generation of vehicles, we're looking at substantially better fuel economy than that. I think that the 6.5 is based on historical data that NREL's captured. So how does that get reflected in increasing the value if you have better fuel economy?
Right. So if you have better fuel economy, on the one hand, you would be utilizing less fuel for the miles that you would be running. But at the same time, we have a factor that we use in the calculation of credits, which is called an energy economy ratio. And so that compares the drivetrain efficiency of a hydrogen or an alternative fuel vehicle to an equivalent like diesel bus. And so if it's a more fuel efficient vehicle, it would reflect in the energy economy ratio, showing that for the same amount of fuel you can have more mileage. And so there would be a higher credit per unit of the fuel utilized for propulsion. And so that would be, it could result in more credits. And we have a process now incorporated in the regulations where periodically we do look at the data sets and so on. And once we have more recent data sets, we periodically go back and update these energy economy ratios.
What's the cycle then of doing that? Because we're about to launch a new generation where we expect much better fuel economy, and we should be able to take advantage of that as soon as possible.
Right. I understand, the desire to have the science reflect in the regulations. We do have a process of regulatory amendments, which has a cycle of a couple of years at the least. And since we just went to the board in 2018, we might, could be looking at going back, with some amendments to reflect, market conditions and some more scientific data sets, new data sets. But, we don't have a set schedule right now. But if we think about how historically we have gone every 2 to 3 years, to make amendments to the regulation, and hopefully, we'll go in again. And I can't say for sure, but we don't want to. But 2020,
we'll
so it could be a couple
door.
of years. Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments before we finally shut down here to get ready to go to the reception? Is that okay yet, June? Yes. So if that's okay, I just want to make one last comment that I wish you all net zero, AVTA as well. Mark here, listening to the folks at LCFS and all this funding available in the state. It won't be here forever. Don't count on 10 years of this. So those who are ready to move, I would encourage you to move sooner than later. Thank you.
Thanks, and what a wonderful day of great panels, and let's give another round of applause to all of our panels again. Yay. So tomorrow morning, we're coming back here at 8:30, and those of downstairs registration will open at 7:30. And again, the reception is going to start at 5:30. Michael Pimentel from CTA is already waiting for you there. So hopefully to see everybody there. Thanks a lot.